Hi, I'm Chris Reykdal, Superintendent of Public Schools for the beautiful state of Washington. I've just had an opportunity to look at Governor Ferguson's supplemental budget. As you are well aware, every 2 years we write a full, complete 2 year budget in the state. And then in the off years, it's a cleanup budget, if you will, a technical fix, a need to adjust. There's no question that times right now are very difficult, especially for families with high inflation and high costs. We have to think about strategies to make things more affordable. State budgets are the same way. And so, unfortunately, this budget takes an austerity approach. I've been in education my whole life. As a teacher, a school board member, a parent, I've worked in higher education. I've seen us go through these cycles in the state of Washington, and they're hard. And it's hard for governors to write budgets. But I think what's troubling for me these days is we know so much more about income inequality and tax inequality in our state. So constantly believing that we have to cut public services is wrong, whether it's direct services to our families and our communities, to schools, to higher education, early learning, cuts to public employees who do the hard work. We don't have to make these trade-offs that education is somehow a trade-off for transportation or housing. In a state full of justice and real authentic leadership where we all come together, we should be talking about how to pay for our highest priorities that compel us forward. Cuts to public services hurt us. It directly shrinks incomes and jobs in communities and ultimately does big, big damage. So let's talk nationally. There's no question after data, fact after data point, after research point that comes in, Washington state is actually a low funded state when it comes to education. We're ranked 40th out of 50 states, 40th. There are only 10 states that spend less of their income, their aggregate economy, back on public ed. There we are down there at 2.58%, and the national average is 3.1%. What does that mean for you at home? What does that mean for you as a parent or grandparent? It means if this state was funding education similar to the rest of the country on average, we'd have $4 billion more a year invested. That's $4,000 per student in our state. That is a massive difference in personalized learning, in customized solutions for each kid, lower class sizes, better pay for our paraeducators. There's so many things we could do with that. Let me put it in context for you. Instead of being $4,000 more per student like we should, this budget and prior budgets have cut our state's funding per student when we adjust for inflation by $500 a kid over the last 6 or 7 years. So not only are we not investing more as we should, we're actually going the wrong direction. We can do better than this. And let's remember our performance. By eighth grade, there are only 4 states in the country that are statistically outperforming us in reading. Washington State is a strong state in reading, but we're just average in math, and we've been very candid about that. So none of these austerity cuts, none of this approach of cutting things, whether it's our nonprofit partners or our school districts or the state education agency, none of these cuts are going to improve reading. No cuts to early learning are going to make early learning better. No cuts to dual credit are going to get kids more access to college while they're in high school, saving families money. These are the kinds of things that have consistently been put on the table. It's not new, but continues to trouble me and I think so many folks to realize that we're living in one of the highest income states in the country, third or fourth in per capita income. So much so that the tax cuts the Trump administration just put forward is going to cut taxes for the millionaires and billionaires in the state of Washington somewhere between $10 and $14 billion a year just in our state alone. But what is our response? To go capture some of that, to invest in higher ed and K-12 and early learning? Or is our answer that we have to keep cutting public services, the public sector, and education because there's simply no way we can get to fair taxation? I reject that. I think that's a false narrative. I think a state as ingenious as ours and as savvy as us and as forward thinking as us needs to put budgets forward that ask the very wealthy to pay their share. You shouldn't be sitting there as a middle class family paying 10 to 12% of your income in state taxes while the very wealthy pay 2% or 3%. Even capturing a share of that $10 billion in tax cuts for the very wealthy to put back in our schools would not only make our system more competitive, our students more successful, but it would level the playing field for taxpayers. Let me give you an example. We pay $5 billion a year collectively in the state property tax. Not your cities, your counties, your schools, the things that you get to control locally, but the state property tax, nearly $5 billion a year. If we cut that in half and shifted that tax burden to the very wealthy, the average family in this state would save somewhere between $600 and $1,000 They would get tax relief, and it would put 10 times as much money into housing supports through lower property taxes than the expenditure proposals for housing this year. We've got to go beyond the old broken playbook of economic distress, cut the public services, wonder why we don't get good results, and then continue the cycle. We have to talk tax reform, fairness, shifting the burden from middle class to those who can afford to pay, especially after they just got the biggest tax cut in the history of the United States of America. So this year and the year after that, I will be proposing all kinds of transformative ways to do this. First, how we invest in schools differently, a task assigned to my organization by the legislature, but it's going to come with tax proposals as well. I challenge everybody in the state, no matter where you are, what side of the aisle you're on, no matter your political beliefs. I challenge you to ask decision makers, why are we not talking about progressive revenue that lowers taxes for the middle class, shifts the burden to the very wealthy to level that playing field while we simultaneously invest those extra dollars back in our public schools? It's a question everybody should ask. It's one I'll be asking and putting a great deal of energy into. I thank the governor for the hard work of balancing a budget. It's not easy to do. I challenge lawmakers with the next step. Take the opportunity to think progressively and creatively and trust the voters. Put big, bold solutions in front of them, because if it's lowering their taxes and making the tax code more fair and investing in education, they're going to be there for us. I appreciate your time. I'm Chris Reykdal, State Superintendent of Public Education, and I intend to lean into every single bit of leverage and relationship authority that I have to improve public education in Washington and make our tax code more fair. Take care, everybody.